It is such a pleasure to be able to come and personally thank you for the work that you're doing as a mentor for the children in Champaign, Urbana. I believe that the most important infrastructure in a community are the children. And there's a quote that I reference frequently, and it is, "Don't tell me what you value. Tell me what you do, and I'll tell you what you value." Well, you're telling me what you value because you take the time to spend it with the children in this community. We all have a very full plate, a lot of different things that demand our attention and our time, but you make that commitment to spend it on a weekly basis with a student and make an impact in their life. So as superintendent for Champaign Unit 4, I am very appreciative of that commitment to the children in our community. It also gives me this opportunity to thank individuals who work to make sure our programs are thriving and running. And so I'm very appreciative to Lauren Smith and to Barb Linder, who help coordinate the programs in Champaign and Urbana. Yes, you can certainly applaud them. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Barb so we can begin with the rest of the program.
Thank you, Dr. Wiegand. It's exciting to see all of you here, and I know that you were sad not to get up at 6 o'clock, like I was sad not to get up at 6 o'clock to set up at the Vineyard Church, who it really is sad that we're not there, but maybe another year we'll go back for breakfast. I wasn't surprised to see the snow because it always snows when we have our National Mentor Month breakfast or luncheon, but this is pretty nice, huh? It's kind of pretty, not blowing, and we're able to have school. It's not -20, so. But mainly I'm excited to be here to see all of you and to celebrate mentoring. I will point out that we are specifically, the school-based program, CU 1-to-1, is one of the mentoring programs that sponsors mentors in our public schools. Also, Talks Mentoring has recruits and supports mentors to come in and work with our kids. We have several people from Talks here, including Reverend Davis, who got the program started at about the same time we started the 1-to-1 program. Reverend Davis, I know I saw you, but he's not here right now. But we appreciate the Talks and the Big Brothers Big Sisters mentors that also serve our students in our schools. This year for our school-based mentoring program that the districts support by supporting coordinators, CU 1-to-1, it's our 20th year. We started in 1994 as an effort, a combined effort of Unit 4, District 116, the Regional Office of Education, Rantoul Schools, Parkland College, University of Illinois. Everybody got together. They heard about this woman that was doing this amazing school-based mentoring program in Norwalk, Connecticut. They brought her here, brought some people in to listen to her. Now, if you've been in the public schools, you know the public schools do this all the time. We hear good ideas, we get excited about good ideas, we bring in people to talk to us about their good ideas, we get people here excited about the good ideas, and we work to implement them. We tend to do this on a rather cyclical basis. What's pretty exciting to me about our mentoring program is that 1993, actually, when Dr. Weinberger from Connecticut came, the people we all liked her so much, we said we want to come back, we want her to train a group of mentors, which she did in the summer of 1994, were our first mentors at Urbana Middle School and at Bottenfield School. We are continuing that same program, that same model 20 years later, which is pretty unusual in school world, and it's pretty exciting that we're able to do it across both districts, that both districts we have the same program. And we're able to do that because the districts are seeing that mentoring matters, that it makes a difference. So that's what we are doing all year. You should have on your table a card that says 20 years of mentoring, thousands of stories. We've had, over the course of the 20 years, literally thousands of community adults that have been mentors, thousands of students that have gone through our program, and I'm often asked, so what's happening with our graduates now? And I know a few of the stories, but I don't know very many. So what we're really hoping to do during this year is to start collecting some of those stories, to hear from some of our graduates, from Denise Graves, who was our very first graduate from Urbana High School in 1999, and to hear from our graduates who have graduated since then, but to hear from students who maybe didn't graduate or who moved on. And to not just hear from students, but to hear from mentors, their stories. Mentors who are currently mentoring, mentors who maybe students have moved on, but their story still continues. So what we're doing today is we're starting that process of telling our stories. So you get to be here to listen. We have 5 mentors who each have very different stories. And my husband and fellow trainer, Jim Linder, will be the facilitator for those interviews. He's going to invite those people up one at a time and kind of pretend you're in the Good Morning America living room, and he's going to talk to people about their mentoring story. And what I want you to do, your job as audience, is to listen, to process, to think about how is my story like that story, how is it different? What can I learn from that story? Is there anything that challenges me in that story? What can I take away from that story? And then I hope it helps you to think a little bit differently about your own story. So with that, not quite as brief as I intended it to be introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Jim and his panel. I might point out that when you panelists come up, 2 things. The microphone needs to be held pretty close to your mouth. I'm not going to turn it off, so you'll pass it off to the next person, leaving it turned on. The second thing is we have chosen, in telling our stories, not to use our students' names. One of the things that we try to be very clear with our students is that we respect their confidentiality, and their stories are their stories. We are here to tell our stories. We're not here to tell our kids' stories. So we want to hear our kids' stories, and we will do that another time. But today we're hearing our mentors' stories.
Thank you, Barbara. So I know when you begin mentoring, you have anxiety about whether your mentee will like you and how it will go and everything. But I think if we're honest, we also have a picture in our mind of what success would look like. You'll be the first mentor with a Nobel laureate when they grow up, right? A little bit, that idea that we have about what success looks like, it's a little bit like the expert who did seminars on parenting around the country. And before the expert had any children, he titled his seminars, "The 9 Infallible Rules for Being a Great Parent and Raising Brilliant Children." Then he had a child himself and renamed his seminars 7 Guiding Principles for Being a Great Parent. Then he had a second child and renamed his seminars yet again 4 Ideas that Might Be Helpful to Parents. Then he had a third child and came up with the final title for his seminars, 2 Things You Might Want to Consider Before Having Children. The idea is that many of our thoughts about what success looks like get washed away pretty quickly, but that doesn't mean that we're not successful. In fact, the success of mentoring takes so many interesting shapes and forms, both for the students and for the adults. Today we're going to be looking at some of the mentor stories and reflecting and wondering on the idea of success. So we're starting with Jane Hedges. So Jane, if you'd come up here now. Jane recently retired from the University of Illinois. She started mentoring in Edison Middle School 8 years ago. Her mentee graduated from Central in 2012. I've done pre-interviews with everybody, so I have some questions that I prepared, so it's not totally off the cuff. And one, Jane, when you and I talked, you had a beautiful image which you shared with me, that you said the process of discovery is like peeling the layers of an onion. Would you talk a little bit about your experience peeling the layers of the onion with your mentee and as she got to know you? And hold the microphone. There you go.
So I think that that image just came to mind when we were speaking, because there's a process of unfolding as you get to know one another. And often it seems very slow. So that initially there were times when what we did together was just simply play games, and there wasn't a lot of talking going on. But issues would come up with respect to the game that would allow a little bit of conversation, and sort of one more layer would maybe get peeled away. And I think that initially I felt very inadequate about all of this. I felt as though I should be doing more. There should be some way in which I could advance more rapidly our connection with one another. But in retrospect, I think that for both of us, it worked really well that it was slow and gradual and non-threatening, if you will, for both of us, that we were able to just do, I was sort of following the initiative of my mentee in terms of what she was interested in.
And you pointed out that, I mean, as all children, she wasn't developed yet. She didn't know what she was good at, what she would do, and everything, and she had quite a switch in learning about herself, didn't she?
Well, she, that's sort of true, and yet I think she had insight into herself. I think that took me a while to sort of completely understand. But one example that I remember from middle school which I found incredible, she was really interested in playing volleyball. And she tried out for the team and was not accepted. And so she took the position of team manager, which allowed her to practice. She wasn't allowed to play in any of the games, but she was present all the time. She was allowed to practice. And by the next year, she was good enough to be on the team. And I think at some level, I mean, the dedication that she showed, the willingness to take a road that I think many people would feel was somehow unacceptable. I found, especially given what happened to her later, I thought she had really incredible insight into what might be useful pathways for her.
So part of your story of being a mentor is your children were not athletic. Your experience of high school was not that of a student athlete. But with the mentee, who was a phenomenal athlete, you actually got to experience a whole different, I mean, how would you describe that?
Right. Well, yeah, high school looked a lot different from the perspective of working and experiencing with my mentee than it did either in my own experience or that of my child. Sorry.
There you go.
It was a very interesting process of discovery and learning and coming to understand a different aspect of high school than I had ever really comprehended before. So and that was a wonderful experience.
So mentoring for you provided an opportunity to actually kind of enter into another person's life and experience in a very unique way that I know from talking to you, you found very rich and rewarding.
Completely, yeah. It was a wonderful experience, and I think the opportunity to get to know the young people in our community, not as a parent, but as a mentor, but at some level, sort of also as a bit of an equal. I realize that may sound odd, but she had talents that I certainly didn't really know anybody who had. I think I have talents that she didn't really know anybody who had those talents. And so being able to, sort of another part of this onion peeling, if you will, that you become acquainted with each other's strengths and talents and abilities, and it allows you to benefit mutually, I think, from this interchange, so that you learn you learn things about yourself that you didn't know before, and I think it also enriches the life of the student in the same way, that they learn to sort of look at aspects of themselves that maybe they hadn't fully appreciated, or hadn't even thought they talents they hadn't even thought they had.
So one of the things that we're doing as we talk today is pondering the question of what is success. And clearly from talking to you, you, in your story, count your experience as a mentor as a success. So briefly say how you would define success now that you've experienced what you have. What made this a successful experience in your life?
I guess I have a fairly embracive concept. Certainly, even if you look at it completely objectively, the story of my mentee is a complete success on anyone's level. But I think also, in terms of the human connection, the way I was speaking a minute ago, I think this is so important in our society, and we're such a society that values quickness and rapid response, and everybody's sort of attached to all of their devices all the time. And the process of getting to know someone really well and becoming being allowed to share in their life at a certain level, not as a family member, but as a really good friend. I think this is just, this is an incredible blessing, I think, for the mentee-mentor couple for whom this happens. And I think that alone makes it a success if this is enabled to happen.
Well, thank you, Jane, for sharing your story with us. Our next story comes from Joel Sanders, who's an Urbana police officer. And his story, you'll see quickly, is quite different from Jane's. He started with a 6th grader at Urbana Middle School in 2011. He is now matched with a 7th grader. However, it's not the same mentee. In fact, actually, it's his 3rd boy in 3 years. So, Joel, let's start in. How did you decide to begin mentoring in the first place?
Chief Conley and the Urbana Police Department has been very supportive of mentoring over the years, and it's something that's always been out there and an opportunity to do. Having 4 of my own children, it wasn't something I had an opportunity to do. And as my kids got older and got out of school, or a couple of them out of school, I had more of an opportunity to use my time to mentor, and it was something I'd always wanted to look at and do, and I finally had the opportunity to get into it.
But it didn't quite turn out the way you'd expected, did it? So tell us your story here.
I actually got into it at the beginning of the spring semester. The first young man was a lot different than me. It was everybody, as I've been around these gatherings of mentors, I've learned everybody has the same experience of wanting to rush into it and wanting to get a connection and wanting to build a relationship, and learned really quickly that's not going to happen as fast as I want it to, especially since although I love sports and I'm left-handed, I can't dribble a basketball with my left hand nor my right hand. And my first mentee, we spent pretty much every day we were together shooting baskets. And I'm not sure if I felt really bad or he was really confident at the game of horse because I never won one. But I learned through that's what he needed, was just somebody to spend an hour a week with him. Near the end of that semester together, we started having, I wouldn't even call them in-depth conversations, but conversations with a little bit more meat to them than we had at the beginning.
So you're looking forward to the next year, and then what happened?
I met with Barb, and she says we haven't seen a registration card for him yet. And we kept looking and found out that he had moved. And Barb's like, I've got another individual for you. And so I met another student and got another mentee, and he was a lot different. Sports, he and I had the same talents with basketball. And he enjoyed shooting, and I enjoyed beating him at horse because he was the only one that can. And he was into computers, and we spent some time in the computer lab, and we really started actually at the end of that year. We went to the thing at the end, the dinner, and he's like, "Now, are you going to be my mentor next year?" I'm like, "Yes." And he was going into his freshman year, and we were both looking forward to that next year.
And then what happened?
He didn't make it to school at all, which was very hard. Being an Urbana police officer, him going to Urbana High School, I ran into him a couple times over the summer. I knew the direction he was going. I was able to meet his aunt, as who he was living with, try to put some things into play to get him to attend school, and it just never clicked for him, and he didn't make it.
So what did Barbara Linder do?
She took the opportunity to give me another phone call and ask if I would like to try this again. And he said, "Do you really have somebody who's wanting to move?" And she said, "Well, that was the first question I asked him," and he said he's sticking around, so hopefully this one works out.
So, Joel, how have you kept yourself motivated to continue? Because that's difficult.
It is difficult, especially with the second one. I shouldn't have taken it personally, but I did. I felt like maybe I had let him down, and felt like maybe there was more I could have done to help him be successful. And so I did ask myself, do I want to put myself out there again? And I think that that's one of the things I get from this is the relationship, is knowing that there's, my view of kids has always been one of two things: my kids and their friends, or the kids I deal with in my profession. And I wanted an opportunity to continue to get a relationship and to know people who are different than my two views of the world.
Okay. So, looking, of course, in this community, 25% of the community turns over every year, so it's not surprising that some of our mentees are part of that turnover, and not everyone here's mentee will be here next year. But from the outside looking in, one would say, well, that's not a very successful story, but yet you do deem it success. So how would you define success for you as a mentor, and what this experience has meant to you?
Well, success will be if he comes back to school next year. I think as I look at it, it's an evolving scale. If he wants me back as his mentor next year, that's success. If as we develop, as our relationship grows, he loves to talk, and as he continues talking, if those conversations continue to go from just who he is to who he wants to be, and if I can be part of that, I think if I look at the two I'm not with now and him, as they look in their life, if there's ever anything that clicks that, hey, I remember Joel saying something about this, or making a decision based on something I said, that would be success.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Joel. Our next panelist is Maureen Banks, who is the Director of Safety and Compliance at Facilities and Services for the university. She has spearheaded getting her department involved with the mentoring program for 8 years, and for the last 6 years has been a mentor herself. And of course, Maureen, you know that Barbara loves you because you've done such a great job of getting your department involved in becoming mentors and being a kind of a constant supply. So describe for us how you recruit mentors, how you get the buzz going, how you get people actually being willing to do this.
Well, thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. We have a mentor program at Facilities and Services at the university. And it started several years ago, back in 2006. We
get the mic a little closer.
A little closer? Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, there was several colleagues and myself were invited to be guest readers at Booker T. Washington School. And it was there that we learned about the one-to-one mentor program. And we, at the same time, the university was creating or updating a strategic plan, and one of the initiatives was to foster a collaboration between the university and local schools. And so that was kind of like the perfect storm where I was able to pull the three of those events together, and my unit, Facilities and Services, or F&S, was very supportive of starting this program. And what we did was we adopted a school, we adopted Booker T. Washington, so all of our mentors start at Booker T. Washington, and then, as you know, they go through the system and they end up everywhere.
Everywhere.
But they do start at Booker T. Washington.
So one of the things Barbara pointed out is we've been able to maintain this program for 20 years. Things tend to wind down if you don't put energy in. So you said that you do a yearly recruitment?
Yes, we do. We have we do what we call a recruitment lunch. And we set aside, basically, we have, F&S has all of the electricians, the trades, the carpenters and the pipe fitters, and as well as architects and engineers and planners, people that build and construct on the campus and do the maintenance for the campus. And so we have that, all of the different types of folks that are involved in the program. So you have this yearly lunch, and you bring in they basically, their lunch is a half an hour. Sorry about that. Their lunch is a half an hour. So we set up 2 back-to-back lunches, and we invite them, and we have a pizza. We go around and we canvass the different buildings that our people are in, and we invite them to come in and hear about the mentor program. And then the fantastic folks at the CU One-to-One also come, the coordinators in the school at BTW, as well as Lauren Smith. They come and they talk to our folks, and we just spread it out and talk about the program. And what we have is a lot of our current mentors come in to that lunch, and they tell their story to the prospective mentors that we're trying to engage.
You said it's really mentors who recruit mentors.
It really is. Mentors are recruiting mentors, and we do this at the beginning of the year in time for them to be able to go through the training that's offered by the one-to-one program as well.
So you have a tremendous diversity from architects and planners and carpenters and everything, and yet they have something in common now. Mm-hmm. So what effect on your organization, if any, have you seen from them having this experience in common?
We're pretty big. We have 1,200 employees, and we're all across the whole campus. But it really, I think the mentor program, it really, the crux of it is a personal commitment that each mentor has, and that's really what we push, is that they are ready to make that commitment. It has to be a personal thing, that they would make the commitment to stay involved with the student. As you know, when if they're in the program and they graduate from high school, there's scholarship money available. And so we're always telling them about this, and we're really encouraging them to stick with their mentee. We talk in the hallways. There's a camaraderie with the mentors. We'll see each other and oh, how's it going? How's your little guy or little gal going? Or I had something different happen to me, and we might share a story or two. But it does, it really does lend itself to a camaraderie across the different types of individuals that are there.
And then you yourself, after several years, decided you wanted to become a mentor, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to, even though I started the program, I was 2 years before I got into becoming a mentor, rather. And I wanted to be sure I was ready because the worst thing I could do is not walk the walk. But, you know, I just wanted to be sure I was ready to give that commitment. And again, you know, that's what we're really trying to impress upon our mentors, is that you have to be ready to and willing to do it. And because, as you know, it's an uphill battle. Rare is the relationship that starts off and everything's rosy and fun and just talkative and you know, it's work. And so I became a mentor about 2 years in, and my mentee was in 4th grade, and I was telling the folks at my table, when she went to middle school, I think I was more afraid than she was of middle school. It was scary.
Yeah.
But, you know, we weathered it, and she's now a freshman in high school, and it's like the floodgates have opened. She just hit a point. You know, girls like to talk, but she just hit a point, and she just blossomed, and it's really fun. I mean, you get to take them off of campus, and you know, when they're in high school, and that will make a big difference.
Well, thank you, Maureen. Thank you for the way you support the program. I guess the last thing I'll ask you is, you have maybe a broader perspective of success because you've involved so many people, but how would you define success for you, your organization, and the mentoring program?
Well, we started, when the program started, the goal was 1% of our population. If we could get 1% by the end of the year involved in the program. And we started with 4, I mentioned. We have been as high as 36 mentors, and you know, right now we're at 27. And so, you know, just to be able to continue to get the support from my management, and really, when you start talking to some of our mentors, most of our mentors, 20 out of the 27 are males, and that's really good for the program as well. But you know, the program offers a safe, structured environment for our mentors to be in, and it gives them the opportunity to develop a relationship that probably never, ever would happen otherwise.
That's right.
So it is a success. If we can continue to provide that avenue and opportunity for people, then we're looking at it being successful. Right now we're at about 2.5% of our population, so very happy.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. Our next panelist is Bob McGrath, who works with software development at the University of Illinois. He began mentoring a boy at Leal Elementary School when he was in 3rd grade, and the boy is now a 7th grader at Urbana Middle School and nearly as tall as Bob. So welcome, Bob. Thank you.
I'm actually retired. But
Oh, you're now retired. Oh, okay. So your story, the line that we want to follow on this, is that you don't have children yourself. So this was a new experience for you in many ways, and particularly, I guess I want to ask, did you have some concern or lack of confidence in choosing to be a mentor?
well, absolutely. I wasn't sure whether I should even apply to the program because on paper I have no qualifications at all. I don't have kids, and I've never done anything in grade schools. Okay, and you're asking me to walk in, form a relationship with a 3rd grader that you've never met. How's that going to work? And what's he going to think of me?
And how did that work?
Well, it worked excellently. Partly because my little guy is really sharp, and apparently he liked me enough to make it work.
So he helped out.
Well, yeah.
And you said that now that he's in middle school, he's developed kind of an obsession with basketball.
Well, yes, that is a true observation. I mean, it used to be like every week he was obsessed with something different, but it's sort of stabilized on basketball in the past year, which is not something that I was ever good at or even particularly interested in. The main important thing about that, for the point of view of the mentor program, is most of the materials that we get about having conversations and sitting quietly and playing games, that's all out the window. I can, you know, in the basketball room, if I can even hear what he's saying, that's a bonus. So there's not a lot of quiet conversation going on. So we're in the patient building confidence kind of part of the relationship.
You told me your strategic plan for being a mentor did not include playing basketball.
Well, none of my strategic plans ever included that. And in fact, I tripped and hurt myself last year, and it was much. They didn't tell me about this in the mentor training, how dangerous it was going to be.
Okay, so we may have to modify our training, is what you're saying. Okay. You have a unique experience in that you went to Leal Elementary School and Urbana Middle School. So what was it like for you to walk back into that school?
Well, it was terrifying. Of course, when the coordinators discovered that I had gone to school in Urbana, I'm from Urbana, and I still live there, they thought the coolest thing in the world is to send me back to the grade school where I went. Which is, think about that for a second. If you haven't been back to the school you learned to read in, think about what that might be like. Yeah, what can I say? I mean, that was, so in addition to not really feeling that I was well qualified, they were also going to throw me into this weird situation.
So it brought back some memories and some feelings.
Yeah, middle school? Are you kidding me?
That probably wasn't part of your strategic plan either, was it?
No, I got out of there. You don't go back, you don't have to go back after you get out, right? That's part of the deal.
Okay. Well, you've been with your mentee for a while. Mm-hmm. You've kind of seen lots of things. How would you answer the question about success for you, for your student? How do you think about it, or do you even think about it in those terms?
Well, I think that the fact that we've made it 3 years is a success for sure. Can't go wrong with that. Now, there's a long way to go, and at least one of people already mentioned that I know what he's going to hit in a few years, and it terrifies me. He's not scared, but I'm scared. What can go wrong? What kind of challenges is he going to face? So I know there's a long way, and he's not from the same kind of background I am, so I don't know where he wants to go exactly in the world. I know he's not going to go to grad school in computer science, odds are, which is, I could help him with that. Where is he going to go? I don't know. I have no idea. So there's a lot of, it's not done yet. Mm-hmm. For me personally, it's a success. I've enjoyed it. For those of you who've made it to the second year, you know that the best part of the program is that first day of the second year when they show up and are happy to see you. And I mean, his face lit up and smiled. Okay, we won. That was great. And I wanted to mention that one of the most rewarding parts of the program has been in meeting all the other mentors who we all live here, we're all in the same community, but it's a lot of people that I don't see every day or hang out with and so forth, but we all share one thing, that we're willing to step up and do it. And I'm proud, and I enjoy being with you guys.
Yeah, Bob did tell me how much he enjoys just running into other mentors in the hall or the lunches and everything, and what a addition to his life that has been. You also said something that I've been pondering ever since we talked, and saying what it feels like when a child likes you back.
Well, we're not supposed to talk about our mentors, but our mentees, but he's a charming kid, and everybody likes him. So having him like you is really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bob. We really appreciate it. And our last panel member is Mary Koloroutis. Mary is Vice President of Creative Healthcare Management, works with hospitals in helping them learn how to give relationship-based care. She became a mentor to a 7th grader at Urbana Middle School 10 years ago, and has I guess, the longest term perspective as our mentee is now in her 20s. So welcome, Mary.
Hi.
And I want to start because when we talked, you made a comment that has stuck with me, and so much that I wrote it down. You said, if you set yourself up to have an idea of what success is, you will do a disservice to your mentee. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I'll try. I think if we come into this thinking that we have to accomplish something, or our mentee has to accomplish something in order for this to be worthwhile, which to me is a definition of success, then we start to set expectations on the other, and it interferes with just being able to be there and create a safe place and be accepting, which I think is the most important part of the mentoring relationship.
To create
a safe place. And to not be in kind of the driver mode. Kids have lots of people driving them. I think this is a place where they can just be. And that in and of itself will start to unfold if it's meant to.
Okay. When we talked, you made another interesting comment. You said that your mentee was very protective of what she shared with you because she wanted you to think well of her, to admire her. So if she's protecting herself, so you'll think well of her, what is that? What do you do in the meantime?
She did, although I've heard others say that too, that it takes patience and time. And those beginning days of the relationship can look a lot different depending on the personality of the child. But for my mentee, she was really striving to recover some sense of herself. There was no doubt in my mind. And so she did want me to think well of her. And it was easy to. She's beautiful, she's smart, and so I could give her those affirmations very legitimately. But what I noticed over time is that she began to unfold things that scared her, things that worried her, things in her past that were traumatic, things that were difficult. And so what did I do? I loved her, I paid attention, and I was patient. Someone said the first person who spoke talked about following the student. And I think that's really what you do, is you follow and you wait. If it's meant to be, it'll come forward.
And you said that one of the things that she wanted and that you could certainly do was to admire her. Mm-hmm. So talk about admiration in the mentoring relationship.
Oh, that was the most fun part. She was funny, and so when she was funny, I'd notice that and I'd laugh. That's admiration. She was full of herself at times and looked gorgeous, and when she did, I affirmed the new hat, the new scarf, the things that I could tell were an expression of her. She had real writing talent. She didn't know she did, but she started to share some of that, so that was very easy to affirm. So that was all the things that were going for her. There were a lot of things that weren't, and we did get to talking about those two ultimately.
So your admiration was legitimate. It was...
Oh, absolutely. I'd never blow smoke. I think that's kind of like setting her up for success. It had to be genuine. It had to be real.
So I know from knowing the story that she really kind of bottomed out, but then her life changed again. So you got to experience that life is long.
Yes, absolutely. When she bottomed out, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was really distressed. I mean, my heart hurt for her. But I stayed clear that it wasn't up to me to rescue, because I couldn't. It was only up to me to stay there, to be there, and she'd keep coming back. Sometimes there'd be periods, she dropped out, but there'd be periods where I wouldn't hear from her, but then she would come back. And we stayed the course, and she redirected her course.
Mary, you said that, how can I say this? You're so easy to talk to, I could just sit and listen to you talk, but obviously if you did all the talking, that wouldn't work. So how did you balance talking and listening with your mentee? Because I consider you kind of a wise woman who has lots to say. So how did you manage that dynamic?
It was really easy. She was a talker. And she told me from the beginning that one of the reasons she wanted a mentor, she actually wanted a mentor. To me, that was important information because it told me no matter what was happening on the outside, there was something in her that wanted to do this right in the world. And so she told me she wanted to talk. And so I got to listen. And, we'd have conversations. As our relationship went on, I actually brought a few tools in to deepen it because the opening was there, like journaling. She started journaling. I gifted her with a journal, and then she'd share that, and we'd talk about what was there. And I also used some cards, some conversation cards, that opened up the door to more. So I listened, and I encouraged, and
you were patient.
And I was patient.
So, Mary, how would you answer the question we've asked each person now about how do you think about success?
Well, I think for me, I didn't have expectations for myself either. And I think my hope was that if I could touch someone's life in some small way, make a difference, because I know there are lots of people involved in any one person's life, that would be a success. We stay in touch kind of indirectly by Facebook, which indirectly I'm saying because I stalk her a little bit and see what's going on, and maybe she's doing the same. But unbelievably, in December, she sent me a direct message for my birthday, and I didn't find it till last week because it's on my timeline, and I don't remember to look on my timeline. And I'm going to read it, because I thought this is the way I would define success. She says, "Happy birthday, Mary. I'm so blessed to know you. Now, let me just tell you, she has never even given me a birthday card through all these years. So this is 10 years out. I am so blessed to know you. I often think about where I would be if I didn't have someone like you in my life." I'm so sorry. Oh, shoot.
It's okay.
I can't believe that. I even practiced.
Happy birthday, Mary. I am so blessed to know you. I often think about where I would be if I didn't have someone like you in my life. Our times together made me hopeful. Okay. Made me hopeful of a better time in my life. You showed stability, kindness, and love even when I made stupid choices. So I hope you had an awesome day. You deserve it.
That's success, I think.
Thank you, Mary. So I hope that this presentation has helped you to wonder and ponder a little bit your own thoughts about your story, your relationship, how you think about success. One of the things that I keep coming back to is the expression that life is long and we're only in the middle of the story. And to hold on to that, to watch what happens to ourselves and to our children over the course of a lifetime. Mostly, we hope that you will find joy and satisfaction in your relationship with your child. Did you want me, do we have time to do? We don't, okay.
We were going to do just a little bit of giving a chance for you to solidify what you are taking home. I hope you will do that on your own, to think about what will you take home, where did you see yourself, what did you learn? And maybe to say to one other person before you leave what your takeaway is, but in order to be respectful of people's time, and also the fact that I've asked our superintendent, Don Owen, to say a few closing words. I'll ask Don to come up and send us home. I have to say that what I take out of seeing all you together, like Bob, makes me happy to be a part of this community, and I think one of the, my view of success is that we are, and I don't think this is too big of a thing to say, I think we are changing our world, because we are changing all of us who get a window, as Jane was saying, into somebody else's life that we would never, ever, ever get a window into. We may not be going to Africa to experience what it's like to live in a village, but we might be able to experience what it is to live in a mobile home or in an apartment where there are 14 people in 4 bedrooms. We are able to experience a different world in Champaign, Urbana, and that brings something to our own lives, into our community, that wouldn't be there otherwise. So I appreciate each one of you who are willing to do that. And thanks, Don.
Thank you. And when Barbara asked me to say a few remarks to close, I apologize. As a student of history, I always write my public comments on a napkin. And so that might pose a challenge. Thank you for those of you that got it. First, before I close with what I'm going to give you a challenge to close with. So even though you didn't have time for your reflection piece, I'm going to give you something to reflect on throughout this year. But before I do, I want to thank Jim and the panelists. I think Jane, Joel, Maureen, Bob, and Mary did an outstanding job of telling us why we're here. So their stories were very powerful. And as superintendent, I have to tell you, one of the things that's been amazing to me, my first year as superintendent, as I travel around the community, as I attend meetings, as I attend board meetings, Rotary, Exchange Club, Optimist Club, I keep running into people that are vaguely familiar. And the reason why they're vaguely familiar is because they're mentors. And if I'm out at a concert in a park, I see somebody playing in the band, I'm like, who is that? And my son will say, well, he was a mentor at Westview. I'm like, oh yeah. I ask someone else, oh, they're a mentor at the middle school. And I'm like, okay. And that is one of the things that is so powerful, that from my perspective is so amazing about the CU one-to-one mentoring program and all the mentoring programs here in Urbana-Champaign, is that we truly have a community of mentors. I think Maureen said that it's a community. And when I look out on this audience, but then I also know that this audience is just a small portion of the number of people that are actually mentoring. You're the ones who could get here today. Think about how powerful that is. And that does say a lot for this community, how much this community cares for its children and its students. And that means a lot to me as an educator, someone who's a lifelong educator in Urbana. It means the world to me. So thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how much that means. As we go, I just want to close with one thing, and that is one of the things that we talk about a lot in Urbana is that out of all the educational research that's out there and all the educational best practice, it really distills down into 2 things that help define student success. And those 2 things are, does the student have a sense of belonging, and does the student have an adult who cares about them? If a student has those 2 things, aside from everything else, aside from technology, aside from the latest, greatest textbooks, aside from the latest, greatest Department of Ed initiative, if a student has those 2 things, they'll be successful in school. Think about this. You are one of those 2 things. So thank you. As we celebrate this year, 20th year of the CU one-to-one mentoring program, here's your challenge. Here's what I'd like you to take away from today. Celebrate with what you saw here today. Your challenge is to go out and tell your story as a mentor. Tell your mentoring story to someone that you know, a friend or a colleague that isn't yet a mentor, and get them to become a mentor next year, or this year, 2014, as part of the celebration. So thank you again. Thank you to Barbara and Lauren and all of the building coordinators who do such an amazing job communicating with us.